Hey guys, it's Hannah.
Hey, it's Shiloh.
Camila.
Ryan.
And Aubrey.
And welcome back to Mics.and.Mischief, where we will dive into questions and topics that are important to Gen Z. Each week, we will bring you fresh insights, intriguing concepts, and thought-provoking conversations. So grab your headphones, get comfy, and let's get into it.
All right, for this first segment, we want to talk about a little story that we found online and that we think is kind of interesting. Aubrey, will you kick us off on what the article is?
Yeah, so basically, so in Chile, there's this kayaker, and a whale, swallowed him whole when he was kayaking with his dad.
Oh.
And spit him back out.
Is that the whale's way of saying he was not delicious?
No. He tried to pull a Jonas, but...
You mean a Jonah?
Oh, a Jonah. Whatever. No, I actually meant a Jonas brother.
No, I was just going to be like, Jonas
yourself.
Brothers, question mark? Yeah, that's an interesting story. Did it say, when?
February 18th,
Oh.
2025. So it was pretty recent, actually.
Guys, that was days ago.
Yeah.
And this happened in Chile.
Yes.
Guys, that could have been me.
No,
no, just kidding.
No, it would not have been you.
Yeah,
The whale would have eaten you. It would not have spit you back out.
Okay,
Oh.
Thanks
If
for
I was
that.
a whale, I would eat you, Hannah.
Thanks, Aubrey.
Okay, another thing that I found really interesting was that Boom Supersonic's XB-1 breaks sound barrier in 2 historic test flights. So basically, in January 28, an experimental aircraft built by a U.S. company, Boom Supersonic, became the first privately built jet to fly faster than the speed of sound. And they tested this 4 times to make sure it wasn't a fluke, and he was able all 3 times to break this sound barrier. And it was impressive and all this stuff. And
Very nice.
Wait, okay, that's really interesting, and this might be a dumb question, but what does that even mean to break the sound barrier?
I'm actually looking at it right now. So supersonic speed refers to any speed faster than the speed of sound, which is about 768 miles per hour. So when an aircraft breaks this sound barrier, it proves an intense sound that can shake buildings and even crack windows. This noise was a major factor in the failure of the Concorde, the world's first supersonic passenger airplane. The aircraft was only allowed to fly on its top speeds over the ocean. This limits its travel routes. So they basically want to make a supersonic passenger airplane. No, thank you. I'm okay with 12-hour flights.
Why? Just simply for...
Why does the world modernize? Why does the world continue building, even though at some points it seems we've reached peak technology?
There's never a peak.
Exactly.
The sky's the limit. Wait, that's really interesting, though. So the sole purpose of that was simply just to be able to travel faster, correct?
Yes.
Okay, then. All right.
Now we want to talk about what the difference is between cultural appropriation and appreciation, and where the line might be crossed. Camila, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel like a lot of people don't know the difference between cultural appropriation and then there's an appreciation. But there's an easy way to remember the difference. And it's to remember that cultural appreciation is about honoring a culture, whereas cultural appropriation is dishonoring or demeaning a culture. But I also feel like that's very subjective in itself.
Right.
Because to somebody who's maybe not part of that culture, they could look at somebody and be like, well, that is offensive. But then somebody who's in that culture, they're like, well, that doesn't really bother me.
Sure.
You do your thing.
And so I think that brings the question of whose right is it to say, that's offensive to me, that's not offensive to me. Because if you're not in that culture, or you're just I don't know if that makes sense, but if you're not in that culture, then what right do you have to say that that's offensive to me?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also think that lots of people who aren't in that culture take more, they think they're more, cut this part out, but I'm trying to think of the word. They think they're entitled to be able to tell other people what's cultural appropriation and appreciation, and they'll be like, well, that is offensive to me and this and that, but they're not part of that culture, and then it also stops other people from appreciating that culture because somebody's out here saying that it's offensive to them, whereas they're not even part of the culture. So where's the difference? Where
Right.
Yeah.
Where do you allow yourself to live?
Yeah. I think it's deemed offensive if you don't acknowledge the culture that you're quote unquote trying to appreciate. Like, I want to give out the examples with braids. You know,
Oh, that's exactly what I was thinking.
a majority of the time, Black people normally wear braids, and it's considered a norm for them, and it's like a cultural thing for them. So, like, it could be offensive if a non-Black person tries wearing braids, but as long as they appreciate the culture and the significance behind the history of braids, it wouldn't be a problem.
But see, I agree with that, but I also disagree because I feel like one culture can't own a certain style of things.
Right.
Because braids themselves, like, yes, they have a history with African Americans, but it also has a history with Vikings, Icelandic people. So it also has a big history with Native Americans. Their braids their hair and their long hair means so much in their culture. So can you say that one specific culture is like the head of braids and that you need to, acknowledge that culture if you want to get just a simple hairstyle that doesn't really have more depth than I like them, I've seen others wear them, I think they look good, I want to try it.
Right.
So again, is that cultural appropriation or appreciation? Personally, I think it's appreciation, but it's not even cultural appreciation. It's just it's just a hairstyle.
Exactly. And just to be clear, are we talking about like cornrows or are we talking about like actual braids?
When I said braids, I was thinking like normal like extension braids, box braids, bubble braid, like that.
Yeah, so just to be clear, and your point was actually really great about how the Vikings actually originated that hairstyle, and then the African Americans actually took it on later. So, and also to your point, again, like, no one owns that hairstyle. And also, just as you said, I don't even think it's cultural appreciation. That's just a hairstyle. Exactly. And I don't think you have to be like, thank the Vikings for this today. Like, you're literally just putting your hair up in a few braids.
I think that was a bad example of cultural appropriation, but I think what a really good one are food vloggers that are like, for example, there are a lot of food vloggers in the Philippines. If they consider the Filipino food exotic, I would find that, a little bit sketchy for me personally. But if, they enjoy the food without calling it exotic or anything offensive, and it's just food, like anything you try or that's put in your mouth, it's food. So, yeah, I think a big part that plays in cultural appropriation would be food vloggers, and as well as religion symbols on, like, fashion pieces. Like, people are wearing crosses, some people are even wearing hijabs as a fashion statement, and that could be found offensive towards people who actually wear hijabs for religious purposes. So, yeah.
I think it definitely comes with, like, just the intent. Like, what's the intent behind it?
Yeah, like, what's your intention?
But I feel like you can always tell when somebody is being, they're just genuinely trying to either, like, enjoy a certain style or food, and then you can tell, like, they're just like, oh, this? You can tell when it's sincere, care, and then when it's somebody who's obviously not trying to make a point of being offensive.
Yeah, and my opinion about that is, one, is it really our place to judge what other people's motives are? Like, and two, my opinion is that most people probably aren't going to come to something like this and purposely try and be offensive. A lot of times it happens out of ignorance and not knowing. And I think that's also something that we have to keep into consideration. But once again, like, who are we to judge or to base our opinions on whatever someone's doing on what we think,
I think at the point where you can judge is if you're part of that culture,
right?
And you're seeing it happen, and not like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this person, I'm part of this culture, and it's this. But like, I could say for me personally, if I was taking offense, but the person was trying to act out towards me personally with their acts, then I could be like, well, this is offensive, and I'm going to educate you on this subject. Not even be like, you can't do that. I personally would be like, do you know what you're doing and do you know what it means, especially in my culture?
Sure, or even just be like, do you understand? Pretty similar to what you're saying, which is just genuinely asking, like, one, are you ignorant to this? Like, do you not understand? Or do you understand what you're doing and it's a choice, which then it's a free country and you can do whatever you want, but it is, rude.
It's rude.
Music licensing reimagined.
well, that's going to wrap up this podcast episode. Let us know any comments, questions, or even possible segment ideas you would like to hear. Also, if you'd like to be featured or join us for an episode, you can find the link on our social media. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube. Until our next episode, keep exploring, stay curious, and thanks for being part of the Mics and Mischief community. See you next time.